Lance by Chance. The untold story of him wrestling as a Von Erich. LanceByChance.com.
Dave, we are back this week for a little bit of current pay-per-view talk.
Yeah.
Just these past couple weekends, the NWA aired their Back on the Attack or Back to the Attack pay-per-view.
Slice Boogie.
Past weekend was ROH's 19th anniversary review. And let's start by talking about the NWA a little bit because you, me, and obviously Randy at home very pumped about the return of the NWA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's been, what, about a year for them now?
Yeah, I'd say so. They weren't involved in any COVID stuff at all. I mean, they did that Carneyland for a little while, and they had fun with that. And then they started doing things with Dave Marquez's group. But as far as NWA on its own, by itself, giving us actual in-ring wrestling, yeah. This is the first
since Dave Lasagna screwed the pooch. We didn't have content for a little while, but what was your first impression about the NWA pay-per-view?
It felt like an addition of NWA Power. I think it would have been better if they had came back with episodes and built up to the pay-per-view. That being said, you can still see the magic of like the build. Like when you watch the video ahead of time of what they did with Damian Sandow.
Aaron Stevens and
Aaron Stevens, yeah.
Tribute.
Totally put him over as a great baby face and just a fantastic job. They're really good at that. They're really good at those those builds to pay-per-views and builds to weekly shows. They're good at building a feud. It feels I've always said this about the NWA. I've always said this about Nick Aldis in particular. They're good at making things feel realistic and important in terms of their main events.
Yeah, their video packages always on point. I think the promos in studio, that gives it a certain feel. Yeah. You were right. It always feels like a big fight feel with Nick Aldis.
Yeah.
It did feel almost like a glorified edition of Power.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad because we haven't seen them in a year, so we were so excited to see anything.
Right.
That seeing them come back was good.
Yeah,
I personally felt like the first episode of Power was a little bit more impressive just because you had something to come off of, and now we're getting back into that swing of footage.
Exactly. That was what I was going to say. Yeah, that episode of NWA Power that followed was great because I felt like now we're starting to put storylines in progress. Like Aaron Stevens and Kratos are having issues now because Stevens is obviously taking more of a babyface turn, and Kratos is berating him throughout the match. And we're seeing stuff happen with Tyrus and Pope, and we're starting to build stars. It was almost like that pay-per-view was like a hard restart. I don't know if you watched or listened to the latest edition of 83 Weeks when this came out, but the episode was about the Big Bang pay-per-view that never happened. And what was going to happen basically was WCW was going to do a relaunch. They wanted to go cold for about month and a half, and then have this new pay-per-view, and they were going to have a new commentary team and a new look, and they wanted to kick things off like that. And I feel like on a smaller scale, that's kind of what this is. This pay-per-view was to kick things off and start everything over.
Yeah, and I think that's what they did. I mean, with so much of their talent tied up in AEW or leaving for AEW NXT, you had to introduce who you still had, introduce the new bodies, and I think this was a good vehicle for doing it. I was a little bit critical that night of the talent they had on there because of obviously I mean, Slice Boogie was one of the ones we brought up. We
My man.
liked seeing Kratos, but it just wasn't the same as having, to me, like a LA Knight having a Thunder Rosa. But
Mhm.
that's one of the appeals of NWA is they always seem to take whoever they have on their roster and make them bigger, which is cool to see. Now,
And that's the flip side. And that's where things like if they had started off with a bunch of power episodes, I feel like they would have done a better job of introducing us to these people. And the promos and stuff would have got over. And I feel like that's the magic of the NWA since its return is those promos, that studio audience, and just the build of how they get things done.
yeah, I mean, we got to see Matt Cross and Fred Rosser on Power Episode 1, so it's cool to see they're bringing more bodies in.
Yeah.
Now, this past weekend was the ROH pay-per-view, which it wasn't necessarily a hard restart, but it's the first ROH pay-per-view we've watched in a while. And, I mean, I'll give my first impressions of this first. This is where I feel like the crowd was really missing. There was great in-ring work, good promos leading up to it with Jay Briscoe and EC3. I thought Jonathan Gresham and Dak Draper was a good in-ring match. Jay Lethal and Roosh was another good one. We even had an ROH cinematic match with Matt Taven and Vincent. But what were your impressions of this pay-per-view?
It was okay. The problem I had with it was a similar problem I have to AEW pay-per-views, but it's worse with Ring of Honor right now because there's no crowd. They go very long. And when you're going that long and you have no audience, it's really hard. And it's tough because, like,
I know. I think I compared this to like a sandwich with no condiments. Like, we finished eating it, but it took a while and it didn't go down easy.
No, that's why
it wasn't bad. No, it just was super dry, and I think it affected the enjoyment of it a tiny bit.
Yeah. It's just people need to understand promotions. WWE is just as bad as this as anybody, but people need to understand less is more. Like that's just the thing. But one thing about the pandemic, and we're not talking about WWE here, but like I like the 2-night WrestleMania thing right now because it's a lot better than having one night of 7 hours. That's my point. And that's my thing with this show, too. I don't need a 4-hour Ring of Honor show with no crowd. I know you're charging us. Just give us good action. If it's good, we'll like it. Case in point, UFC. Used to be the old days in boxing. You sometimes get pissed at the Tyson fight because it ended in a minute or something. Now the UFC model is you're almost asking for finishes. That's the exciting part. We're looking for the knockouts. And then we want the next fight. People I hang out with, we start watching this show sometimes, and if it's going to like 1:30, 2:30 in the morning, even if they're good fights, we're like, fuck, I'm tired, bro.
And that's the reason. That's probably one of the bigger reasons I don't get into UFC until I've been on a third shift schedule. That is way too late. And it's like, no matter how good the product is, I really can't be staying up till 1, 2 in the morning to see the main event and then have to do like my real life shit the next day.
Yeah, case in point, this show ended this week. The UFC show ended a little before 12:30, and I was like, wow, this is great. So that's the standard they've set. I was like, well, we're done before 12:30. Fuck yeah.
Now, what we were kind of talking about this weekend is between ROH and NWA, these smaller empty arena shows. Well, I didn't bring it up last night, but it's something I just thought about, is that if this had happened a year ago, it might have been all right because WWE was on the same level.
Sure.
Everybody was starting out with empty arena shows. But I mean, we've seen the Thunderdome now. We've seen what AEW has done.
Yeah.
And it almost felt too stripped down.
It did. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, we, a year ago, you might have stuck out you might have been better because we've been looking like, wow, this action is so great, and they did a good job, and the cinematic match.
Yeah, because they would have only been down like a month worth of footage. But now it's like we waited so long for ROH. They did come back with TV. So ROH TV has been going on for a while.
Yeah.
That Pure Title Tournament was one of the things to kick it off. And they kicked it off in such a great way that's why when it came to this, it was like, all right, it's good. I mean, they still rolled out angles. We got a new faction. Yeah. We got new champions. We got Delirious whispering in Rocky Romero's ear,
What's going
and
on there?
the looks that Caprice Coleman gave were gold.
Yeah, that guy's great. But let's bring this back then. Let's just because you kind of just made the point. The Pure tournament was great. The TV was great. What's the difference? There was 2 matches, and there were 15-minute video packages on each of the opponent leading up to each match, and it was solid. Less was more. We built up those matches with quick, almost like NWA style promos and video packages, and we had 2 matches in an hour, and it was awesome. And I'm not saying obviously we're looking for 2 matches on a pay-per-view, but less is more. More video packages to stir the thing up, and boom, let's go.
Plus, the Pure title tournament has the rules with the 3 rope breaks. There's the disqualification.
Makes it feel different.
Yeah, the rules that are built into the match kind of enhance the drama.
And that's the point of the cinematic match. That's why I think that's been so prominent during the empty arena era. It's because you kind of almost need something a little bit different. They had that, but they could have probably used that a little bit more too. Just a few more, little more smoke and mirrors since you don't have the fans. I mean, it's great to have the wrestling action, but I think you need to mix it up a little bit. And it wouldn't kill to have a little sweetening of an audience. I don't think it would be a big deal. I mean, it's helped Impact, I think.
Yeah, and we're by no means like really complaining because we love NWA, big fans of ROH. It's good to see them back. It's just noticing that it had a different feel from other pay-per-views in recent times, and we thought it was interesting to note.
I know I really don't, like, for those who know me, like, I don't really shit on wrestling promotions. Like, even WWE, I don't shit on too much. I'll call shit out that sucks. Oh, that fucking sucks. But for the most part, like, even shows that I don't like, I want them to do good. Like, I get upset. I'm like, well, could you do better, please?
Yeah, and I mean, we only really talk about the good because you want to focus on what's good. Like, us so not being deep in the industry, it's not like we can complain about much and have like a leg to stand on. This was just kind of coming from a fan's point of view, like, that worked, that didn't work. Now, Ian Riccaboni, Caprice Coleman, Rocky Romero, awesome broadcast team.
Yeah.
Even what the NWA did for a broadcast team was good, and that helps that part of the show. But I feel like they're just so wrestling-centric of a program that sometimes you need the little extra things. Like, the one thing I couldn't take from the ROH pay-per-view, at least, was you don't need the broad camera swings showing you the empty arena, where normally, like, if you film the entranceway from the curtain to the ring and to not see those people there, it's like, I don't really need to see that. Why not just get one shot up the entryway of the guy coming out?
Right. That's one thing if, say they're going to fight out in the crowd and stuff like that once in a while. But if action's going on in the ring, highlight the action in the ring in that regard.
Yeah, and I think this is also notable because WrestleMania coming up, they're going to have people in the stands. UFC, we're how many weeks away from the first arena?
It might be a little less
like
than
2
a
or
month
3
away.
weeks, right? Yeah,
it's a little less than a month away because it's going to be the same night as the Impact pay-per-view, which is April 24th. It's March 29th as we record this.
Oh, Dana White not care about you, brother. Are you going to have the 2 TV setup since you're blind?
No. Impact moved over to Sunday now. Impact don't want no part of nobody.
Dallas cares about you, brother. I think Ross Foreman is in his ear like, hey, take care of these dudes.
Dude, I love Impact. They're not trying to fight nobody. Like, NXT is moving to Tuesday. It's like, we got you, brother. We're going to Thursday. Don't worry about this.
Yeah, because
UFC on Saturday night, we go Sunday.
They've really learned from the past. Like, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. Right. And them going head-to-head against anybody hasn't necessarily worked. But they're going with the strategy that's worked beautiful with them, with partnering with other companies.
Sure.
Like, remember a couple years ago when Impact would partner with NWA? They'd partner with, I think it's AAA in Mexico.
AAA, yep.
And their TV program featured like a match from Japan, a match from Mexico. So they're starting to take the things that worked a little better and seeming to roll with those.
Yeah. And at this point, you know what? They're building momentum and steam. They don't need to pick a fight with anybody. Now, granted, like if AEW or WWE end up being on every single night of the week, at some point, then maybe they're just like, all right, we got to fight. But in the meantime, if they can pick a nice primetime spot on a Thursday, and it's not conflicted with anybody with a similar program, why not do it? There was no ego involved. They did what was best for them. I respect them for it.
Yeah, and I think right now we're lucky where in like a month or two, we could be looking at wrestling every night of the week. If pay-per-views fall in the week, it could be wrestling Monday through Friday, pay-per-view Saturday, Sunday.
And AEW still has a show coming out, by the way, for Turner. That's still happening at some point. We don't know what night that's on or what, but one more hour.
I mean, that's crazy. I mean, right now we've got Elevation Dark Elevation on Mondays.
Yeah.
NWA still on Tuesdays. AEW Dark still on Tuesdays. Like,
don't forget about that new reality series coming out, brother. Cody and Brandy gonna be.
That. I mean,
I'm not watching that.
I think if any of us had like a little lady around, maybe we'd watch it with them. But this is just the boys' club right now. Fuck reality TV.
Yeah, no, I have no interest in this as a wrestling fan. Like, I know it probably has done some good stuff with WWE with their lady demographic probably in their audience, but
it brings in a wider array of fans.
Sure.
But
so it's good for the company, but it won't be. I won't be support. I won't be watching it.
We're not their target audience right now.
No.
I think it's disappointing because for all that Cody has said about breaking away from the WWE model and like the Triple H kind of setup, you gotta kind of look at what he's doing, and he's almost looking like Double H right now, like Triple H Jr. Like,
that's right, baby.
He wants to mirror that success, but do it his own way. And I'm not a fan of it, but I can't fault him for it because shit, with this podcast, you got to do every little thing you can do to expand, to market yourself. I mean, I don't think we've shot enough for people that wouldn't necessarily be fans of us, but sometimes you got to do that stuff if you really want to grow your audience to that degree.
Baby, forget about Double H. It's gonna be Triple H. I'm better than that man. All right, baby.
That would be the Dusty coming out in him.
Yeah, I'm a showman, baby. Stardust, reach for the skies.
Now, Dave, before we wrap this up, any last thoughts on anything? Yeah.
This is totally random out of left field, but I'm gonna share this story. It was actually Scott shared it with me from another podcast. I guess a fan wrote it in. Speaking about Dusty Rhodes, I just thought this was a cool story. Kind of makes, as I tell this story, Barry Windham look like an asshole, but it makes Dusty look great. So I'm going to share it. So supposedly, this fan called in, I believe, or wrote into the Marty and Sarah show. I think you watched them. And basically, they were telling a story about Dusty. And this guy, a lot of the NWA wrestlers were getting out, and they were at a restaurant, I want to say, and he was there with his sister who had leukemia. And so the guy wants to get like these napkins signed because he didn't have any for autograph. And he goes to Barry, and Barry's basically eating dinner, so he's like, fuck off. And so I was like, okay, that's, And then Dusty Rhodes, I guess, hears this and goes, come here. And he grabs like a shirt from the big event they were. Maybe it was like the Bash or something. He says, I'm going to have all these guys sign it. And if anyone gives you any problems, he's like, they'll have to answer to me. Everybody will sign this. So they all signed the shirt. He goes back, hands it to the guy. Then he goes and sees the girl, who the girl did not want to come over because she felt she looked bad because of leukemia. Dusty goes over, gives the girl a kiss on the head and says, you beautiful baby, don't worry about it. And then walks out the door. If that's not a good guy and a boss fucking ass story, like, to me, like, I was like, all right, Dusty's just a man all around. So, I don't know. I heard that story. Had nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I wanted to share it with people.
No, that is a good positive note to end on. And that's what we'll end on for the talking segment. But let's play a little commercial here for some of the great live shows we have over at The Buzz.
War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Bringing that to competitors. Till we see the confetti fall, be ready for war. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Bringing that to competitors. Till we see the confetti fall, be ready for war. Tell them I'm ready, any opponent. The crown heavy and every minute it's chosen. A path only fit for kings, and you don't know what this court means. What did you enlist for? If it isn't getting more rings, then you gon' have to switch your team. Trust me, it gets more mean. I'm a nightmare going up against your dreams. First step is explosive like a bomb hit. Bet if I let it fly, I cannot miss. And you ain't got a chance at the top 10 when you getting clamped all night by your locksmith. On the block throwing lobs to my top bigs. I'm a chef, no look, what's the top dish? Tie game, through the pressure as the clock ticks. Crossover.